Hey, good evening, everyone. Glad everyone can make it today. We're talking about our summer plans because so many of our students are taking a look at summer plans, taking a look at what other options are still out there. And since there's so many different types of programs, and some are going to be great for some students, some maybe not. We want to take a moment to present and kind of do this webinar with everyone today and make sure we can kind of see, what else is out there with about one more month to think about before we really need to kind of start shifting gears towards the summer, right? So kind of thinking about basically a lot of these programs today we'll talk about, we'll have a couple of deadlines. Well, you'll see the kind of examples that we have. But today I'm joined with Sophia from our team. Sophia, would you like to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yes, thanks, Anthony. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia. I'm an educational consultant here at Illumin. And I guess I'll share just a little bit about my background. I've been in the education industry for the past 10 years, helping with various aspects of college planning, including academic planning, and of course, college applications. And summer planning is a big part of that. So I'm happy to be sharing that information here tonight. So I guess I will go ahead and just jump right in.
Yeah. I'll add one quick thing in case there are any newcomers. You can feel free to use chat Q&A. We try to answer all the questions that come in at the end. But without further ado, yeah, Sophia, take it away.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Anthony. So as you know, there are a lot of different programs and summer options out there. So I will start by going over different types of summer programs that you can start considering. The first type is what we would call experiential programs. And as the name sort of implies, these programs are really great for students who want to experience something new and different, but more importantly, for them to get experience and get exposure to certain areas that they've always been interested in or were curious about learning more about. So experiential programs are a great way to explore and to start building evidence for students who are still not very sure on exactly what they might want to pursue for college and so on. So experiential programs are best for students who are in Rising 9th or Rising 10th grade, but they can be good for any student at any time. Of course, some programs, there are many that are still taking applications for this summer. And you can see down here, these are some programs that are still accepting applications. Some of them include National Student Leadership Conference. They offer some great courses in different subject areas for students. Stanford Explore has a lecture series. It's particularly in biomedical engineering. So there's different lectures that they provide in that area. It's offered through the Stanford Medical Center, so that can be a great option. Cal Poly Epic is another great one that offers engineering related courses that students can start exploring if they're interested, as well as Miss CEO is a great one for leadership type programs that help with mentorship and career opportunity discussions and whatnot. So some programs that are still open for those seeking to get some experiential activities and to build that exposure to different interests. Next type of program we have are what we call academic programs. These are programs that offer students some more in-depth knowledge in a particular field of interest. Great thing about academic programs is that there is opportunity to earn college credit for some of the courses they might be taking, even programs. Other great thing is that academic programs, they offer students the chance to actually experience college classes, sometimes even directly on the college campus. So again, a great way to gain both knowledge, academic knowledge, but also that experience at the college level. And again, it's a great way to gain evidence of interest to present to colleges in future essays and resumes. Academic programs are really great for Rising 10th and Rising 11th graders, but again, they're great for any grade level, especially if a student already has an interest they want to explore and want to learn more about. So academic programs are still available for students to apply to. And again, down here, you'll see a lot of different options available at different colleges. A lot of colleges do have what they call pre-collegiate summer programs, which are specific programs for high school students and a chance for them to explore college level courses in various fields. So academic programs are a great way to go as well. Moving on to the third kinds of programs is what we call research-based programs. Research-based programs are really great for students who want to gain practical experience in a field that they're interested in. It's particularly great for those who may be interested in STEM fields in particular, especially because they get to actually learn about research-based skills that then produce a tangible outcome in the form of a research paper, or sometimes even an opportunity to get published in an academic journal. So regardless of the actual, I guess, outcome of it, the great thing about research-based programs is that the students are able to develop real life skills through this. So that includes not just research skills, but also the teamwork aspect, communication, time management. Also really great for networking. A lot of students have networked with professors and mentors through these research programs that have developed into something even more enriching for them afterwards. So great for a lot of different reasons. Often these research-based programs are mentored by an actual professor or an actual researcher doing actual research in a particular field. So research programs are really great for students who may have a very strong interest in a particular area. So often rising 11th graders and also rising seniors tend to delve a little deeper into these research programs. Again, at the bottom here, you'll see different programs and even organizations that offer research-related opportunities and mentorship programs. So Horizon, Polygens, Pioneer. UC Santa Barbara SRA, this is a really great research program offered through Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara. Their deadline is, of course, tomorrow, but just wanted to emphasize that beyond just actual, college-based programs, there are great ways for students to build their own research through outside organizations that can pair them with mentors who will guide them through their own research questions. So it's another way to get involved. If I'm missing anything, Anthony, please, feel free to.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think someone in chat is using a tool to take notes, but I just realized it's probably helpful to have pen and paper today, or just your hands fast on the screenshot button. But we'll be happy to go back to any of the slides if people want to go to at the end of the webinar also. So just let us know.
Great. Next are project-based programs. This, as the name implies, are programs that give students an opportunity to actually create projects. So again, these are more hands-on. And great thing about project-based programs is that they're able to create tangible projects and results that they can then add to their portfolio, if you will, especially when it's relates to STEM related majors. Not always, but often STEM related majors. Having a portfolio of projects like this can be very helpful. So project-based programs are great. Again, they help develop not just academic and real life skills, but also that teamwork, communication, and time management skills that colleges do see as being very valuable. There's many different programs that offer these types of project-based opportunities, but some that are still accepting applications include Design the Future. In regards to Design the Future, we're not actually clear on whether they're going to be offering a program this summer, but if they do open it up this summer, it's a 2-week program where students can actually build their own app without having any prior coding knowledge or anything like that. So that could be a great one for those interested. Blue Stamp Engineering is also a great one. Inspirit AI, Quarter Zero. So there's many different options still out there accepting applications for those interested in building some projects to kind of get that portfolio going, if you will. Let's see. And beyond all those, other types of projects, of course, include personal projects. These are projects that students who have a strong curiosity in something, a great way for them to show that initiative by building or creating something of their own. And oftentimes these personal projects can hold a lot of weight because they do sort of grab your attention, because it is something that is going to be unique to what the student has personally worked on. So personal projects can come in the form of like a blog, even. If a student has a strong passion for something, they can start a blog and write about it, maybe even a podcast. if a student knows a family friend, or maybe even if they have their own hobby, they can create a website for it, a social media account, what have you. So you can get very creative with personal projects. But again, summer planning does not have to be, actually applying to a formal program, but can definitely come in the form of just personal projects that students may want to work on. So it's another way to utilize the summer months for students.
And so I guess, Sophia, let's pause right here because I do want to ask, like, how do you think an admission reader is going to look at a student's, for example, podcast in comparison to, let's say, a research program or a course they take at a community college, things like that? What does this really kind of show about the student in comparison to those other factors or those other items?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So personal projects, like whether it's a podcast or a blog, again, they're really great because they again show that initiative on the student's part. It shows their strong curiosity and their potential for leadership, real life skills that are necessary to actually bring their ideas to life. So that real life aspect of them actually taking their own initiative and creating something can go a really long way, especially if it's something that is related to their major in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not, it's still a great way to kind of showcase, your skills.
And to an extent, there's also this idea of like, if you're able to get a couple more, views, if you're getting 100 views or 1,000 views on, well, the podcast or maybe a video or something like that, there's also a form of kind of, validation from that as well, right?
Absolutely. So if there is an idea for like a blog or even a website or a social media account, I always advise my students who do have something like that to continue to nurture and grow it over their high school years. And some even will take outside summer programs and apply it to their existing personal projects. And so if you can be creative in combining your personal with other skills to continue to grow or develop, it looks even better and stronger, right? So it's another great way to do that. But thanks, Anthony. Those are some great points that definitely important to note. Community service is also another way. So again, it doesn't have to be a program that you're applying to and paying to, pay to play, so to speak. But community service is a really great way to show colleges that you are community minded and that you are contributing something of value to the larger world out there, if you will. So again, you can get creative with community service projects. Some students, what they'll do is if they have a personal hobby like dancing or piano, what they'll do is they'll start teaching art or dance or piano to younger students as a kind of community service on their own is one way some students kind of do that. Others also look, there's organizations that offer and match you to certain community service opportunities. So Zooniverse down here, these are some websites that offer actual community service or volunteer opportunities. So Volunteer Match is another one, Code for Social Good. Tutoring is a big one. A lot of students will tutor over the summer as well. And summer camps, either with their local community centers or their local even churches, what have you. So other great ways to kind of show that community service aspect beyond just summer programs per se. Next, another great way to spend summer is, or kind of plan for summer, is through work and or internships. Work is obviously paid jobs and they can be very helpful on applications because it again shows more that real life responsibility and the ability to manage your time, et cetera, et cetera. Internships, some are paid, some are unpaid, are a little harder to come by for high school students simply because some of them have certain age restrictions or whatnot. Having said that, though, there are ways to find internships through either organizations that offer them, such as UC San Francisco Pitch, I believe, has an internship opportunity coming up. Late April is their deadline, it looks like. There's also a lot of city-based internship programs that students can proactively look for. And that's kind of where they can look for certain internships that do interest them and even cold email, do some cold calling and outreach. Surprisingly, there's no guarantee in getting a response, but I have had students that actually did land an internship by just like cold emailing, cold calling. So it does happen, and it can be a great way to find, your own internship that way. So
Yeah. And I'm gonna stick in a question here because there was a question about is there a best way to contact professors for research opportunities, and is this possible for East Coast schools? I think that to an extent, and I think Sophia, when you were talking about having students cold email, you're sending out a lot of emails, right? And you're not necessarily going to get responses from many of them, but or all of them. But I guess, do you have any best practices or tips that you kind of recommend if a student did want to go that way?
absolutely. So best place to start is if you know a family friend or have a contact from previous programs, like professors that you've met with at a previous, summer program or not, and just kind of keeping in contact with them. But like you mentioned, Anthony, a lot of times it's literally just cold calling as many as you can. That are doing certain research that you're interested in or have opportunities that you would like to kind of partake in. So a couple of students last summer for me, I had one who actually reached out to, I think, about 50, 60 different professors from different colleges. He was, interested in computer science. So he was kind of targeting all the computer science professors at various colleges, reached out to them, cold emailed them, and he got about 3 responses. And 2 of them turned into a summer research opportunity. And so that was all through him cold emailing. So it is kind of a numbers game. You don't know who will actually respond and if it will be fruitful, but either way, it's a great learning experience also. And a great way to kind of start building those contacts and relationships regardless. So, yeah. Are there any other questions about internships in the chat?
That was the one for internships, but yeah, again, it's typically most, if you're like 16, 17, 18-year-old, it is going to be hard to find a program that's willing to mentor students or has kind of the appropriate resources or projects for those for that type of student, right? So again, it is the numbers game is important here. So
Absolutely, yeah. But definitely another great way. The other, let's see. Yes. So during the summer, it's also a great time for students to preview courses that they know they will be taking, next year, especially for those AP classes, for example. So some students will start looking ahead and sort of set themselves up for success, if you will, and either get, outside tutoring, or even just getting like an AP prep book, or just using Khan Academy just to kind of make sure they're retaining what they have learned in the school year. Because if you don't, revisit certain topics or review them for the 2-3 months you're on summer break, you will forget or get rusty on a lot of them. So a great way to spend some summer months is to preview or review some of those courses to prepare. And there's some organizations that obviously offer a chance for students to either get preview or review in courses that they want to delve more into. So AJ Tutoring is a tutoring service. Harker School has some really great summer options. De Anza College is another great community college courses that students can take, and also Khan Academy, as I mentioned. So, utilizing the summer months to kind of prepare ahead is also another great and important way to prepare and spend the summer. The other great thing to keep in mind for summer is, of course, if students are especially rising 11th graders, but really whenever they're ready, test preparation is a great thing to keep in mind for summer as well. So by test preparation, it's not just SAT or ACT, because that's now optional or not even looked at for some colleges now. But test preparation in terms of just even possible competitions that students might want to consider to just sort of highlight some skills outside of school. For example, if a student's really strong in math, one of the competitions that I have recommended is national testing competitions like AMC, the American Math Competition. If students really love coding or computer science related work is their strength, USICO is a coding competition for students. And so these are some great competitions to get experience in and also prepare for. And if you do well, wonderful. If you don't, no harm done. So that's another great way to spend summer for a lot of students, is to perhaps prepare to partake in certain competitions, to highlight their skills. Next, where can students, maybe explore more of their interest through courses? As I mentioned previously, community colleges are a great way for students to gain, some more academic insight, take classes that might interest them, or if they're looking to earn college credit, or even perhaps boost their GPA, or maybe they did not so well in a class the year before. If they want to show colleges that even though they may not have gotten the best grade the year before, if they wanted to really show that they are capable and strong in their class, some students will take those classes outside of high school over the summer just to show colleges that what they are actually capable of, just to show them that progress, even if it might not necessarily show up in their high school GPA. So taking classes through, community college or even online high school electives can be really great. UC Scout offers some classes at the college level. APs, some students take over the summer to open up some spots in the school year. So they'll go through UC Scouts to take certain AP classes over the summer. BYU Independent Study offers some independent courses and so on. So that's another great thing to be mindful of or even plan for if it's something that you would like to do. I hope that made sense.
And adding one caveat, because I know some folks have questions around like earning credit for courses outside of the high school, right? In general, like for example, even with like let's say, UC Scout, BYU Independent Study, they'll have a transcript and you can turn that transcript in separately if your high school doesn't take the course per se. But the important part here is if you're taking, let's say, intro to philosophy, most high schools probably don't have an intro to philosophy class, that can just be turned in separately. The tricky part happens when you're trying to skip classes and you take, let's say you need to take pre-calc and you try to use UC Scout to take pre-calc to skip into, let's say, AB calculus at your high school. Your school might have a rule that says, hey, all the classes must be taken basically in-house at our high school or in our school district. So just be wary of kind of that kind of pathway of jumping around between different areas. But if you're taking a class by that's standalone or that your school doesn't offer, usually it's pretty safe in terms of turning it in for credit later on.
Yes, absolutely. Great. Let's see. Some other great things to consider is even if a student doesn't want, you don't need to take classes for a particular grade or credit. Some students really do want to just explore just for fun. Some just want to learn more about coding or pick up an extra skill. In that case, places like MOOC, which is, massive open online, courses like Coursera, edX, Udemy. These are great platforms that offer students courses they can take, and often even for a certificate of completion. And those certificates of completion can be great to add to student, profiles and resumes, just to show, outside interests that you have pursued and have taken, just to kind of feed your own interest and curiosity. So even if they're not for actual grades or credit, taking some additional courses just for fun outside, these are some great ways to kind of, get that in as well. So
these might not be things that necessarily we would truly like include as part of the college application, right? Especially if you're taking this in 9th grade. But again, being able to explore, let's say, forensic sciences, right? When it'd probably be harder to find that as a 4th credit course, but that it's probably going to be a little bit easier on something like Coursera, edX, things like that. Especially if you're doing it on Coursera, you could probably do it anywhere also.
Exactly. And so these are also really good for students who may be working on their own personal projects and just want to increase their skill to be able to do something. Like I have a student who wants to learn more about Java. Was it Java or Python? One of those two. And so he's actually taking it through Coursera just to kind of get some more skills, not Coursera and edX. And there's several others too, like ID Tech, that offer them. So again, students can get creative and find their own summer planning in a way that can be, strong to show colleges that, they're kind of taking their own initiative to work on the things that interest them. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. So, on that same note, college and career research, of course, is another great important thing that students can be doing over the summer is to just start exploring. Check out different virtual college fairs, see what kind of colleges are out there. You know, we hear a lot about the big names all the time, you know, like Stanford, Columbia, NYU, UCLA, but there are so many other wonderful colleges that may not be as well known, but have amazing resources, amazing programs, what have you. So really utilize summer to just kind of get excited about you know, college and future and the future. And I always advise my students, it's never too early to kind of do your own research and start getting excited, like envision where you want to be for the next 4 years after high school, and see where it is that you feel really called to, whether it's location based or, you know, major based, what have you. So again, college and career research and exploring colleges and visiting them is a great thing to do over the summer. And again, you know, outside of all of those things, another great thing to kind of keep in mind is to just continue to develop yourself. So as students, you know, it's important to continue to grow as an individual and as a person. So we always encourage students to, you know, maybe select some books you want to read on your own that are interesting to you. You know, maybe start journaling if you'd like. You know, there's really great, you know, reading lists on places like Goodreads that have great recommendations on books that students can check out for their own personal summer reading. There's also great blogs, creative writing workshops. So really kind of cater to your personal hobbies as well. And don't forget to kind of work on yourself outside of just, you know, academics and, you know, programs necessarily, because that's also going to be helpful.
And this came up in a previous webinar also, like Columbia will ask you, what are you reading or what other media have you consumed besides what is required at your school? So of course, like schools will also ask you about this later on. And unfortunately, well, I guess you could cram it, but it's much harder to cram that as part of the application process in 12th grade. So.
Absolutely. You bring up a great point because college essays also ask a lot about self-reflective questions. And so, you know, if you've been kind of doing this outside, you know, reading or developing or, you know, kind of focusing on things outside of, you know, just the schoolwork, then it'll be easier to kind of answer those interview questions, but also write those essays and what have you. So always encouraged to do that. And then, of course, you know, most important is remember it is summer. So we don't want students to just be working the whole time and, you know, have no time to breathe. You know, it is summer. So, you know, make sure to give yourself that break time as well. Use that time to reset, kind of work on your self-care because mental health is very important. And it's without your mental health, nothing else will work out as successfully. So that's going to be something to remember and remind students to do. Check out local events, go hiking, you know, maybe take up a new hobby, whether it's cooking or sports or pottery, whatever it might be. Don't forget to cater to your personal interests as well. So, and self-care. Am I missing anything here, Anthony?
I would say, including parents also. I guess that's the most important part of this slide also. Parents can take a break as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so that was kind of gist of all the things that I found important for summer planning. In terms of the big question, what should students or families prioritize? Anthony, any insight there you'd like to start us off with?
Yeah, I mean, and actually, I'm scrolling over questions because we're allowed to go into Q&A as well. I think there's people like to make direct comparisons between, let's say, the two things. It's for example, one of the questions was like, Inspirit AI courses compared to Coursera and edX, are they valued the same, right? And we can definitely talk about it from the admission reader standpoint as well, right? But I think there's also going to be a element of using this time to help students explore, right? And I think Henry, we do newsletters, and one of the questions that we most recently did was like, yeah, why is it important to do a summer program or have a summer plan? And it's again, you get this is the only time that an admissions officer, or frankly, anyone who's going to be, you know, learning about the student has a large chunk of time that is mostly undefined that they can fill with whatever they want. And you learn very quickly based on what you filled it with more about the student, right? So it is this question of like, I guess I am answering this very vaguely of like what should I pick, but it is going to be like, what do you want to do? What are things that interest you? And to an extent, can you go out and prove it? Can you go out and do those things and come back and tell us what you learned? That's one of the more important things. But of course, like from the perspective of also admissions, I think I guess, Sophia, I'll toss it back to you of thinking about like from the admissions perspective, like what do you think is critical for each grade level or students of different ages?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it really is, it depends on the context of the particular student's profile or application. So to the question of, I see a question here by someone asking about Inspired AI courses versus Coursera or edX.
Right.
Are they valued the same? I mean, it's hard to say what will hold more weight because again, it all depends on the context of that particular student. But if I were to kind of give a general sort of answer to that, it would be, programs that do have a kind of more or less a rigorous application process, even if it is for a summer program, are going to be more selective. So of course, courses through Coursera or edX, most students can, pay and then join. So if you compare something like that to a program where students are committing, a full 2-3 weeks to kind of learning and developing and actually working on a project, which Inspired AI provides, it's going to indicate that the student has, experience in developing these other skill sets that maybe Coursera and edX, just as an online passive course, may not be able to offer. So that's something. But again, it is personal to every student, but generally speaking, if you're a rising 9th or 10th grader and you're still like kind of exploring what it is you might want to major in for college, those experiential programs that I mentioned can be a great way to start exploring different subjects, maybe even academic programs to kind of get your feet wet and understanding like the academic part of what a certain major might be like are great places to start.
I'll add one other thing about this Inspired AI compared to Coursera question. The other thing to consider is also like Inspired AI to an extent. Yeah, I mean, it's an online course, but there's an instructor, they're walking the student through projects and kind of helping students throughout this. Coursera and edX are self-paced, right? The student needs to have that motivation to go through it. This is a similar idea. I think there's another question somewhere here. If I find it, I'll pull it up. But there's a question also of like, is it better to do a personal project compared to like a project that's going to be through a summer program? To an extent, the issue here is also the same thing of like, does the student have the intrinsic drive and the skills and the resources and the mentorship or help to finish that project? Or frankly, is it better to have that, paid educational experience where you're able to do these things a little bit smoother, hopefully, right? And it's not to say like I don't think one is necessarily going to be like, I don't think necessarily like paying for a summer program is going to be shunned at from the admission reader's perspective, right? But definitely like it shows a level, like it is impressive when a student is able to kind of set their mind out and say like, I'm going to try to work on this particular app, and they're able to get it done over the summer as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to kind of add to that too, Anthony, a lot of students, like you mentioned, there are some who already like have the strong drive to create something on their own, which is wonderful, which is great. But most students initially do need that support and structure. And so what I usually like to advise my students is, if you're a rising 9th or 10th grader, but really any grade, and you're really unsure, start with these programs that can give you more of that structured support. And then from there, it'll kind of inspire you to maybe start creating your own project or research project the following summer. And maybe that following summer, you'll be more equipped with more like resources and knowledge to then do something on your own or try something more creative on your own. So it depends on the student.
Definitely, I guess also like, Sophia, do you mind just moving to the next slide? I'll definitely just talk a little bit about, we'll go kind of deeper into Q&A as well, but definitely if you're interested in a free consultation, we're probably going to start talking about maybe like specific student cases or majors and things like that, but you'll definitely get a more detailed experience in a free consultation to kind of get an idea of, what programs might be a good fit, maybe a particular student or a particular interest, right? I will also add, if you want to go one more slide, we're going to do something different. We're going to do a webinar office hours next week, Monday. I put the meeting ID, but we'll also send an email to everyone that registered for this webinar. And it's meant to be 1 hour. Sophia and I will be there, and you can come with any questions that you have about summer programs, or if you wanted to get a longer response on one of the questions you submitted today, we'll definitely have more time to talk about that as well. So definitely you can, write down the meeting. But again, we'll send out a link afterwards, probably tomorrow or the day after, so that you'll also have this information in your back pocket. So okay. We will go, and we've got quite a few questions, so we'll try to get through all of them. I saw someone wanted the community service slide, so maybe we can move back there first, and then I'll take a look at the other questions also.
Community service. Okay.
Yeah. There's a question surrounding this idea of, so the question of like personal projects and whether they need to be, what do they need to achieve in order for it to be meaningful in the admissions office? This is, I guess, is a question of like, does a social media account need a certain number of followers, or does a blog need a certain number of subscribers or something like that? Like, how would you gauge that for the admission reader, or like maybe for a 12th grader that's about to submit for applications?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's why the personal statement essays on these applications become particularly helpful, is regardless of how many followings you have or how much profit something generated, what's really important, what they're really looking for is the motivation and what inspired the student to want to even get involved in the first place. And so regardless of what the outcome may have been, if students can really kind of, sort of write about that experience, what inspired them, what motivated them, and perhaps even the process of joining and participating in a particular community service opportunity, that the content of their experience becomes more important than just like the results of what happened. So I don't know if that answered the question, but again, it is going to be, contextual based on, what is it that the student is trying to achieve or would like to achieve through their involvement, short-term, long-term, and kind of letting that lead the way is going to be helpful in considering what's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the context and of course the specifically what the student's kind of able to start from as well, right?
But I will also mention, if a student has like a hobby or a personal interest, find a community service opportunity related to that. But sorry, my slides are going crazy.
The other thing was they wanted the slide before community service. My bad.
Oh, okay. So this one.
The personal projects, yeah.
Got it. Yeah, so it's kind of related to community service and personal projects. What was I going to mention? So it's great if it's related to a student's personal hobbies, but if it's something that can be related back to the student's possible intended major, even better, of course. For example, a student who was pursuing business actually had an idea to create an app that would help his grandparents' plants get watered. So he built some app where, because I guess his grandparents asked him to water their plants for them while they're gone. And so his idea was, why don't I create like an app where I can build in a system kind of like sprinklers that will automatically water plants when the owners are gone. So that's what he worked on like early in his high school, like 9th or 10th grade, and kind of developed it over the years. So a personal, I guess, passion project like that can go a really long way in a lot of ways, because it's directly related to the student's, intended major, but it's also something the student really has interest in. It's his hobby to like put his ideas on paper and then bring it to life. So to give an example, I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
Yeah, and another related question of like, can my students start a blog or podcast in between 10th and 11th grade, or is it too late? To an extent, if it's also like just a personal interest and this is something that the student wants to do, I mean, that's a factor in this in itself as well, right? Of course, if you're able to do it and you're able to do it well, and you can also present it for admissions, that's great. But that there definitely needs to have that intrinsic drive as well, instead of just like, hey, I want to study psychology, let me make a podcast about psychology just so I can show that evidence, right? Hopefully there's a little bit more behind that as well, right?
Yeah, and I would say it's never too late. There's an ideal time, perhaps for certain things, but if the inspiration strikes and the motivation is there, it's never too late. And a lot of these things, like these personal projects or community service, they don't have to be just during the summer. If a student has time, even on weekends during the school year, it's something they can work on year round. So in answer to, is it too late? It's never quite too late unless it's after you've submitted your applications to colleges, of course, right? But yeah.
And here, this was the question I saw about like a personal project over the summer compared to like a research program. And this was this area of, is it true? They said they heard from other consulting companies that doing the personal project is much better than the like research program or something tied to a university or another company or something like that. And I don't know, so Sophia, do you have a kind of idea for this one?
I mean, I would say there's different factors to consider. One would be,
I would agree.
yeah, well, one would be like, what does the student want to potentially study? So if it's like entrepreneurship, it's probably better going the personal project route just to show that entrepreneurial skill. But if you're more of like a life sciences or STEM student, research might be more beneficial in kind of, developing the research skills that would be necessary for that particular field. So I think it really does come down to kind of the student and other factors like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, if you're doing entrepreneurship, yeah, you can probably go and create a small business on your own or find some people to help you in your own personal project. If you want to research quantum mechanics, maybe it's better to do it at a university and get a professor to help you out there. But I think, again, it's also this idea of intrinsic and self-motivated in a personal project compared to, hey, I'm getting inspiration from a class or another group of classmates or a professor as well, right? So.
And you brought a great point. Getting inspired is key. So if a student needs to get inspired, perhaps it is better to just join a program to start to get inspired, right? To meet professors, to meet others that can motivate them and inspire maybe a project for the next summer kind of thing. But yeah, that's.
I'm seeing a lot of questions just about, will there be a recording? Yes, there will be a recording. So we will send that out also with the office hours as well. And give me a second. I'm just going to look through some of the other.
Yeah, lots of questions here.
Yeah, let's do this one because we haven't talked about humanities majors specifically. But yeah, a lot of summer programs seem to be geared towards STEM majors. How would you advise for humanities students? So let's say, yeah, if a student's interested in English or history or something like that, what would we advise there?
Oh, I mean, a lot. You can get very creative for humanities students. It just depends on how does a student want to apply their interest in humanities. For example, if you're interested in history, are you interested in applying that knowledge towards law, towards policymaking? If so, let's find a way for you to get involved with, politics or leadership training programs, what have you. Other students who love writing, blogs are great. Like I know a student of mine who actually wrote blogs for the LA Times high schoolers. It's called HS Insider Online Virtual Blog, and LA Times actually runs it. So she's actually submitted quite a few blogs. So if you are a humanities student, like find how you want to apply that humanities skill or interest out in the real world. And then from there, kind of work backwards to find what opportunities you can find within that realm or industry or area. You could.
And also want to clarify, you can do research for humanity majors as well. There are research programs for students that want to do history, that might want to study writing, things like that as well.
Exactly. And programs like Inspirit AI, their tracks actually, they run the whole gamut of different like subject areas, including like mental health and AI, law and AI. So fields that students don't initially see the connection between like technology and humanities, programs like that will give students that insight into how they can relate and how they do work together going forward. So there's a lot of different ways those type of students can find ways to kind of plan their projects and such.
A question around a lot of these certificates or courses will offer a certificate, and certificate to pay. And it looked like there are certain ones that will ask you to pay for the certificate. And the question was basically, does the certificate itself matter all that much?
So it can't hurt, but it probably wouldn't add as much benefit as you'd expect.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I would say like one of the things to consider is like how easily available is this course, right? If it's going to be an edX course, it's probably not too hard for students to finish that class. And, if you do really need to present that you finish that class, not particularly, right? And again, another thing to consider, I think we mentioned this earlier, but with the summer plans, it's not necessarily that you need to present everything you do over the summer as well, right? So you can take an edX class just for fun and say, hey, this is something that I learned or something that's different. So.
Absolutely. Although I think when it comes to specific technical skills, like some students do take courses in particular coding languages and whatnot, that could be helpful just to really demonstrate that you did complete the full course and have a good understanding. But really, like, no harm done. But in terms of how much could it help? Yeah, I think it just may not be as advantageous as one might think for some types of programs that are readily accessible, like some courses on edX and whatnot. But
Yeah. A question and two questions actually related to work. So a question about like, for if you're going to do part-time work as a student, would it be helpful for a STEM student to have something related to their subject that they're interested in or something like that? And maybe some ideas for a student that would want to kind of have a STEM related job?
I mean, it'd be great if they do, wonderful, but it doesn't have to relate. So not everything has to relate to their major, because for paid jobs, the most important thing is that it's showing real life responsibility, regardless of what that industry or job might be related to. So I wouldn't necessarily seek jobs that are related to your major for the sake of that. If it does happen to, relate, great, no harm, but it wouldn't be a priority.
It's definitely fair. And yeah, hard for a 16 or 17-year-old to work in a chemistry lab, I would assume, or just try to find a lot of jobs hiring for that type of student. And then same kind of similar question about jobs, that the student had a part-time job managing a podcast for 4 years. Is this something that you think should be presented as part of like a college application, or is this like valuable experience enough to put on the resume?
Yeah, so one of the things that stands out to me about that question is the student was involved in it for 4 years. And so a lot of times, regardless of what that job might have entailed or what it was related to, colleges like to see depth of, commitment over breadth of different kinds of commitments, right? So that commitment in and of itself will go a long way in kind of indicating positive things. So yeah, any sorts of experience where she's, having to commit and has committed for this song is going to be valuable.
Sounds good. And let's do this really quickly, because I saw a question about biotech and a question about social justice. Do you want to go through the slides again really quickly, Sophia? And maybe we can try to emphasize maybe just those two in particular. But again, like we can definitely, there's going to be a lot of options for different majors as well. I guess we don't have grade level for the student, but that would also be helpful in kind of helping students understand. But for example, biotech, things like UCSB SRA, which I think was under research-based program, right?
So yes. So yeah, so biotech, so Stanford lecture series. That's they actually offer, I think it's about 2.5-week virtual lectures on bioengineering related topics. But it also covers topics in, I believe, neuroscience, neurochemistry, what have you. So that also comes to mind, but certainly UC Santa Barbara SRA is a research program that's a little bit more extensive. It runs for 4 whole weeks on the campus of Santa Barbara, whereas something that's less commitment heavy would be the Stanford lecture. That this summer it's going to be all online, and it's 2.5 weeks as opposed to 4 whole weeks on campus that the UC Santa Barbara SRA program requires. So different options, but they're going to have different commitment levels for bioengineering related topics.
And then for social justice.
Social justice. I mean, that is kind of a big general area. So if the student is interested in social justice and, getting into like policy making, um, yeah, I think LEAP, LEAP, I think it's an acronym for a leadership program that's offered in the San Jose area if they're local to the Northern California area. LEAP, I believe, does offer something similar where they get trained on leadership aspects and they connect students to internships in the community. And I think in the past they were, like the mayor's office or like, I think they partner with actual, yeah, I believe LEAP is the program I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So that could be one option.
There are programs, I remember one called YAPA, YAPA, but I feel like that's more public policy or policy making than maybe directly social justice. But definitely if you're interested in like advocacy, policy writing, that would be a good fit. And I think the other thing I think was also during election years, and we're coming up to one, there tends to be a lot of volunteering opportunities also for students. If there's a particular cause or a proposition or a candidate they want to support, that tends to be also a good way for students to get involved. Okay, last few questions, but if anyone wants to change their mind and add more questions, feel free. This one's a long one, give me a moment. Okay, I'm gonna put this in the answer live. I think everyone can see this when I make this into the answer live. But the question is basically asking, is it important for the project or the activity that I do to have some kind of practical value?
Practical value.
This is, yeah, this for me, it's also like practical value is subjective, which is why I'm also having a little bit of trouble trying to figure out exactly. So I'll put it this way. I'll give some examples. So maybe it's like, okay, you're gonna fundraise for a nonprofit and you raised $1,000 over the summer. I guess that's practical value. Whereas maybe it's like you build an app, but you aren't able to release it. That's not practical value. I think that's like the area that they're kind of talking about. So like how important is that the activity can be like a public good or shown to many people?
Yeah, I mean, if it can reach a lot of people or if it has big results, wonderful, fantastic. But I think more so than like the practical results of it, what's most important is the process, the experience itself of actually start organizing it, managing it, whatever it might be that went into actually creating it or being part of it. That experience, that process is probably more important in some ways than just having these amazing results from it. Although if you have both, even better. But yeah, I think the process of that experience is going to hold a lot of weight and go a long way.
Yeah, and I kind of see where the question's also coming from, right? Maybe they have like a older student who's got like a really competitive major that they are trying to stand out for, right? But yeah, to an extent, it is still early on when you have the time being able to explore and try these various interests. And again, you're not presenting literally everything you do in the summer, right? You can take an edX course just to see if you like forensic sciences or any other interest you have, right? That's still important for the student themselves. It doesn't need to impact the world at that point. So.
Right.
Questions about the internships and reaching out to startups. I think we're going to that like cold emailing, if you want to go to that slide.
Emailing, right.
It was also just a general question about like any recommendations for how students should reach out to startups. Definitely, like, I mean, resume, cover letter, or things like that are important.
Yeah. So, having a working resume to attach to any cold emails that students send out will be very important and helpful. But I always really stress students to students, like if you do end up joining a summer program, really like get the professor's name or the names of mentors you really enjoyed listening to and find them on Google or LinkedIn and just reach out and yes, attach a resume to it, but also express just the curiosity that's driving you to want to, look for opportunities with them. So yeah, so resumes are a good way to kind of break that ice, if you will, in a way to kind of show them what you have done so far or would like to do. Some students I know have created student LinkedIn profiles. There's like student profiles they could create as a high school student, and they can use LinkedIn as another resource to look for people to connect with through cold messaging, if you will. So.
There was a request to go back to the academic program slide.
Academic programs.
I think it's like second or third. Yeah. Okay. Feel free. Yeah, I guess there's a lot of text on the bottom so that people can take a look at all the available options there. And a question about research and publishing research, like where would students start if they're kind of looking to do that or work towards that end goal?
Right. So getting published is not an easy thing to do, especially for high school students. But yes, there are, if it's something that a student really would like to pursue, I will go to the research slide here because there are certain organizations that help with that process. There are never any guarantees. No organization can say we guarantee that you will get published, but there's a couple of ways I guess you can try to kind of strive for that. Programs like Polygens, even Lumiere. I believe Lumiere has a particular program option where students can get help with submitting their research work to get published. So they'll help with connecting students to certain scientific journals for possible publication if accepted. There is a fee attached to some of these programs that do give you support in getting possibly published. Other ways I've seen my students be considered for possible publication were through research programs itself. So for example, like last summer, I had a student who did the UC RMP research program, and she worked with a professor who was working on some research. At the end of the 6-week research program at Santa Barbara, that professor reached out to her and actually asked if she wanted to continue helping her with the research for possible publication as well. So if the researcher's publication does get published, that student's name will also be on there. So it can happen in different ways. It can happen through actual organizations that can give you support in that way, or students can actually start seeking out those opportunities through actual research programs that they may be participating in at some point too. I have a student who is also might get published along with his researcher through ASDRP. ASDRP is another research organization based in San Jose area. So yeah, it can come about in different ways. The opportunity, not necessarily the guarantee of publication, but those opportunities can arise in those ways.
And I think we'll do this one as the last question of community college courses, and just highlighting how that impacts GPA or calculations there. Can we just quickly kind of discuss that?
Yes. So I'll just keep it simple. Ask your high school counselor, because every high school will calculate those things a little bit differently. Some courses do transfer, others don't. Whatever your situation is, those specific questions are best for actual high school counselors at the school. They'll have the details on that.
And yeah, I think it's also like if you're concerned if a credit is going to go through, the the college admissions officers will also have some clarity on that. Usually we go through by the UC A through G requirements as a rough guideline, but best to make sure, so.
If it does take any courses outside of high school, even if it doesn't show up on the high school transcript, it's important to know that you can still share on your college application that you did take outside courses at the college level, and simply send a second transcript from that particular school or organization. So yes, it's something that can and does happen.
Okay, all right. Really want to appreciate, I want to say thanks for everyone that joined us till the end. We covered so many different topics and so many questions today. Again, we'll send out a recording from the webinar today. We'll also do that webinar office hours section. So you'll get a link to that meeting as well. Yeah, we hope to see you all next week. And we have a webinar coming up in 2 weeks as well. I think we're talking about early decision, early action, as folks are going to start thinking about college lists soon, making sure it's very clear, how we should be making those decisions, since especially with early decision and a binding agreement, that everyone kind of understands how that works. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your night. And thank you, Sophia, for joining.
Thank you.